The way communication works now is you can reach across the globe, even though we have different time zones, instantaneously.
Right.
You can have real-time information that you share. And Friedman, who's an economist, talks about the never-setting sun. And so the way that business is going these days is you can always have somebody working somewhere for you or for an organization because the sun is up somewhere, right? So the way that the earth has become easier to communicate, easier to build infrastructure, and then it's becoming more service-oriented every single day, that it makes it easier for you to scale across. And so with international, and global was really the buzzword when I went to school. So Arizona State University had a finance emphasis with a global business degree. Yeah. And then I waited a few years, and then I went off to Thunderbird's School of Global Management. Mm-hmm. And partly because that's the trend of the world. And also, if you look at what happens here economically, here with business development, there's a global impact that's happening. I mean, something that happens in Turkey today could impact some other trade with finance or what have you. Something that happens in the Middle East, we see that today with oil and gas. It's going to affect prices and such. So if you better understand that the interrelationships, then your capacity becomes more dynamic.
Right.
So that's why.
And that's obviously probably been very helpful in all the different career steps you've taken along the way. How would you say it's been most impactful?
Well, I'll tell you, let me back up and give you a little history, because I didn't finish my undergrad until I was 33.
Okay.
So I had been in a kind of your serial entrepreneur, started some businesses when I was younger, built them up, worked for other people, did a number of things. Mm-hmm. And then prior to getting married, so I got married when I was 25, and I had promised my mother before she would die that I would get my degree. Right. So soon after I was married, we kind of simplified some parts of our life, and I went back to school. Yeah. And then it took us a little longer because I actually built a little fitness company. And then one of my very first clients owned a financial services company. Okay. And he pulled me aside. It grew rapidly. That little fitness company was just supposed to pay the bills while we were going to school. And then it grew rapidly, and we started having some pretty tremendous relationships. And then so this client, the very first client, witnessed this growth and then pulled me in his office one day in front of his board and said, do you think you could do this in the financial services company like you did? And I'd never worked in that space. And
in the financial services business right after that, what was the focus there? Obviously, probably relationships, like you said, was a big part of it, but different industry. What did you really do to help grow that one?
So it's education, right? So that's even like if you think about going out and teaching somebody how to use a piece of equipment, you're educating. You're teaching them, hey, this movement helps this part of your body, and this is what you should do, blah, 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 frequency. Same thing with financial services. So I can tell you the first couple weeks, maybe even a month, I sat in front of a yellow pad of paper trying to figure out this industry, and it was tough, because I hadn't done it. So then what I started doing is I started reading a lot, obviously, trying to get my handle around that retail side, and then not being licensed, not having worked with anybody. And then my employer was doing some educational seminars around financial services in various places around the state and being fairly successful with it. So what I did is I took that emphasis and I learned some other things about compliance in the world of finance, like a Boeing, for instance. They offer some great beneficial services to their employees with 401ks and things like that. Right. They have to teach their employees how to use those things. And a lot of times they do these enrollment meetings. They're very short. They just pump them through. Nobody really knows how to do it. Yeah. So we started figuring out, okay, the corporate world, there's some corporations that are publicly traded that are in the state of Arizona and other places in the country that are have very lucrative, very generous giving programs for their employees. Mm. Well, some of those are very flexible where they can also move them out, and they have somebody in the world of finance that will be able to manage it and charge a fee or what have you. And so we looked at all that. So ultimately what I did is I got in and made it based on education, everything. So we had two separate entities, and the entity of the education was what I really ran. And then we did financial seminars in community college districts. We couldn't promote services in those classes. They had to stay, but we were allowed to offer somebody an optional session at the end if they wanted to come and sit down and look at their own personal finances. And then within the corporations, we would go and say, hey, look, you have this. There was a thing called the 404C regulations, and that was the one that said you have to educate your people. So we would go to the HR people and say, hey, how are you keeping up on that? Right. I'm not. Okay, we'll come in and cover that for you. Oh, okay. And in turn, we want to be able to offer an optional service. We will not promote our services the whole time. But at the very end, we'll give them, hey, if you have any questions on what we've covered, you can set up a private meeting with us, and we'll go over your own personal stuff. Bottom line. And so what had happened is when I started, there's probably 500 people that would go through these classes. Yeah. When I was done, I think when I left that organization, there was probably 12,000 people a year going through it. And we had anywhere, depending on the instructor, from like a 45% to 80% close ratio on these people becoming clients. So it was a way to hit the mass affluent markets and to get lots of assets under management and grow relationships. And it was all education focused. So when you really offer tremendous value with no strings attached, then it's pretty remarkable to see how people respond to you. And so again, the advisors were trying to make a living, right? And these people wanted to make the best decisions, and so you try to solve the problem. The problem was they didn't have enough resources to do the right type of education and compliance, and the corporations.
Right.
And so we would do that, and then the people attending needed help, or they wanted second opinions, and so we were there to provide that. And then the advisors, or if they became clients and it was a good strategy, then they were able to make a great living off of it. So it was a really cool symbiotic relationship in which was quality everywhere, right, is why it grew so fast. But we ended up becoming one of the fastest growing financial services companies in the nation. Right. And so this guy would just stand up in front of trade shows and say, that's the guy that did it right there. And I was, pretty young, and it was just an awesome experience. But it was just trying to catch on to what is needed. Where's the real need? And that's a great way to solve problems, when you find the needs. Different products or services that are offered on a daily basis or find their way into the market. Yeah. How many times you go, oh man, I actually thought about that once, I needed that. And there it is. And that guy's making millions of dollars on it because they're satisfying a need, not just a want, but a need. The wants kind of die out and go away after a while. Right. They don't have the endurance because they're not needed. But when you find that, and it's hard in developed markets like in the United States, because a lot of stuff has been figured out and we have solutions for most stuff. And when you find that little inefficiency, is what we call them, is when there's an inefficiency that you can create efficiency for, then remarkable things start to happen. But you've got to have a number of things in place to make it happen. Right. But when you can create efficiencies for organizations, people, that means saving them money, saving them time, helping them be compliant. What is it? What is the call, right? Right. And once you define that, then great things happen. And that's always the biggest challenge for young people that want to be entrepreneurial. It's cool to think, hey man, I really think those shoes are great. Well, how many pairs of shoes are out there? And is your shoe going to do something special for that person? Right. It may be really cool, painted or whatever, but really, is that going to differentiate yourself, or can somebody come right in and take it away from you? So it's trying to find a place where you can be different and solve a problem that's not being solved.
Yeah.